Hey there. Welcome to Spiritual Psychology. And I'm here with Chris Distefano, a doctor of acupuncture, integrative acupuncture. And we're going to talk about shadow work and reintegration, one of my favorite topics. Welcome, Chris.
Thank you for having me.
We were at a conference together with Fred Dodson, and we're both consciousness explorers and practitioners. So I think this is going to be a fun conversation. So talk about integrative acupuncture and shadow work and reintegration from your perspective.
Okay. So from my perspective, I've been doing the spiritual exploration for about 30 years, and it's recently become a lot of fun. And it's funny because it's a frustrating path and until you start to really feel it. And that's the way it was for me. And I've found that I've done the whole thing. I could write a book, and I'm in the process of it, about the journey. And I've spoken with other people that have done this journey, and it seems like one of the things that's the most missing is the importance of what's going on this plane. So many teachers dismiss it. They're like, oh, this isn't real. This is this and that. And from different levels of consciousness, various things are true. But what is true is this realm is the manifestation. Our vibration is presenting in this realm, in this body.
In real time.
In real time. This is all there is, and all that's real. At the same time that it's also not.
Yes.
So
Thank
it's
you.
a beautiful paradox that all of the teachers, and I've been to them all, tell you one or the other. They dismiss it. So now, in the past few years, I've really been realizing the beauty of the body. Like, the body keeps a score. Everyone knows, a lot of us know about that. And in my practice, what I've found, I've been doing acupuncture since 2008. And I've been working on patients. We use something called alarm points. So an alarm point would be, if I press, let's say here, that's going to be a lung alarm point. According to some systems. Other systems will say it's, I don't know, a kidney alarm point because it's the end of the kidney channel. Tapping is going to give it a different assignment. What I've found in the way I work is, if I press on a point in the body, and I'll scan a few, depending on, what a person's coming for. And these are very specific treatments. I'll find alarm points where I'll press with nearly almost no pressure, and the patient will jump.
It'll be excruciating.
When I say jump, this patient will scowl at me and think I'm really intentionally causing pain. And I'll frequently press with my other hand somewhere else on the body and be like, this is how hard I'm pressing. Because what they have to understand is, this is an area that they're protecting that hard. Now, what's actually going on, I speculate, because the body does represent the consciousness, the presentation of an individual's consciousness in this plane. Areas of consciousness, psycho, emotional, spiritual, whatever realm we want to go into vibrationally, is also going to present in the body, mental, whatever it is. So the areas that we've come to lock away, parts of ourselves that we don't want to see, will sequester off. And how do we sequester it? By putting the biggest obstacles to ourselves there. So the ego will put, don't go there, it will hurt you, and it'll put fear there for you. And the body will put pain there. So don't touch me there. I don't want to feel that. That is not part of me right now. So then I'll lightly touch there so I can get a read, and I ask the person's body, how can I turn this off? And I'm given points on the body elsewhere, and I will press or put a needle depending on the patient. And then I'll be able to, once I insert that needle there, once I put pressure there using acupressure, I can press in that alarm point and there's no pain.
That's fabulous.
So we're clearing the shadow like this, and this is a certain type of shadow work. Some shadow work has to be by confront in this plane, dealing with issues in person. But those deep nonverbal ones, the self-assessment ones.
Oh, I got a few of them. I want. No, I have an issue with the circulation in my left leg. I just had a knee replacement, and I know I've stored a lot of stuff it's all first chakra, which is for people, that's like from your pelvis, so your perineum or the base of your spine down. So all my physical issues are always from my hips down. And it's interesting. I mean, I've been doing psychospiritual work for 30 years. And so my work is very, I wouldn't say it's confrontative, but it's certainly about bringing things into consciousness, because from my perspective, what I'm working with is people's relationship with their emotional selves or their authentic self, right? And so aspects of the self that I'm sure are often correlated or tied to some of these points, and people's inner relationship of disconnection or rejection or neglect or even abuse of parts of themselves, and once you bring that into consciousness, most people, especially if they're doing personal growth work, are like, I want to love myself, I want to care for myself, I want to be, that's what inner child work and working what I call the golden shadow, which is connecting with the aspects of our own authentic self that's like full of brilliance and joy and creativity and knows why it's here, again, that a lot of us have cut out. So my work's really conscious. I'm very fascinated from my own experience this year with the surgery. So my first major surgery after a C-section, but you get a baby with that, so it doesn't matter so much. You're distracted after you have that a C-section. But yeah, I'm really fascinated about this, about trauma or unresolved issues or shadow that is more held just in the body, and and may not even have that much of an intellectual correlation or an emotional correlation or a spiritual correlation that needs to be processed in a physical way. So I'm curious about that, is how much, with this kind of clearing, physical clearing work of this holding of energy, or you can talk about what it is that's being held in those places. How much of it doesn't need to be processed and is just cleared through this practice of integrative or more intuitive acupuncture that you're working with, or acupressure, both?
It's it's amazing, because one patient I'm thinking of in particular, brilliant woman, she's a therapist. But she comes to me and she has back pain, and I'm working on her, and where lower abdominal was not, basically everything there was pretty active. In her case, I couldn't use needles.
Active meaning painful?
Yes, very
Okay.
reactive, not just painful, because remember, this is what the body's going to throw. So if I press, she's going to jump.
Okay.
So it might be tickle, it might be, but it's very, very active.
It's not subtle.
Not subtle at all, and she knows it's very guarded.
Okay.
Of course, I am not a therapist. I am not going to get into conversations pertaining to why that's happening, because that's not what we're there for.
Right.
But instead, what we did over the course, and it took about 3 sessions, and I did shoulders, I did all, and she progressively, her body each time was in total more relaxed. And her demeanor, she became more comfortable in her skin. Like, all of these phrases we have are actually really based in reality.
Oh, yeah.
So she was more comfortable in her skin. So she was able to, because these are possibly things that cannot even be verbalized.
Right.
And so they really do just get processed at that deep energetic. And yes, sometimes I'm doing it, it will elicit crying, it will elicit joy, emotions that have been trapped. Now we're going back somewhat to the work of Wilhelm Reich. He was Freud's right-hand man before Jung came along. And he actually did psychology using somatic techniques as well, and would sometimes emotion. So there's nothing new under the sun. This is my flavor of it, because this is what's come to me and what I found to be effective. And that's one really powerful form of shadow work. Combining that with coaching is frequently very powerful, because then we're able to start, when the issues that have come up, I've had people say, oh, you pressed that point on my knee for my heart, and the next day I remembered I'd hurt my knee, and this. So memories will literally come back that have been sequestered. So I'm shocked every day that I do it. And the day that I'm not, I'll switch to a new technique, because it is just, the wonders are just beautiful.
I share that in my own work as well. And the ability and the desire actually of the system, both our own individual system and the larger system, to always be looking for ways to heal and manage itself with just the right amount, with the right circumstances. Really, I think that's what it is. When we create the right circumstances, there is this natural flow of healing or rebalance or reintegration of coming into greater wholeness and empowerment. That's just like miraculous. I'm in awe at every session that I do. Still, right?
And that's how you know you're doing it right.
Yeah.
And it's really cool because you see this in your work too, I'm sure.
Mm-hmm.
And you just mentioned it with the golden light and everything else. A lot of times on the spiritual path, we're chasing the light. We're trying to be full of the light. And again, what the teachers don't tell us, and I got this in a vision, in a dream, whatever, recently, and I experienced it at a retreat. The light can only fill the areas that we've taken out the darkness. And I don't like to use darkness I don't like that I used it in that way. Darkness is beautiful too. But the areas that I would consider a disharmonious vibration,
Yeah.
consider that a parasite of sorts.
Absolutely.
So parasitic energy.
Absolutely.
So these areas of the body that are holding this tension, it's almost like taking a parasite out and opening up the space to be filled with your authentic, true self, with your higher self, with love, with all of these things that we want to chase. This is what's opening up the room. And you're doing your shadow work. And I have other shadow work I do, others, like, it is so beautiful to see the release, to face our fear.
Right.
And have that growth and just be filled with the love that we've been pushing away.
I think so, because we're talking really structurally, I think the word darkness can be misleading, but the word filled is really what you're talking about, because
Yes.
it's not about emptiness, right? It's about, there is no emptiness. There is no empty space, really. Everything is filled. And what it's filled with is the question mark. And we have a lot to say about what things are filled with once we become conscious and realize how much power we actually have. And so for me, you said they're almost like parasites. They're absolutely parasites. And that doesn't have to make sense to people. Really, any experience that you're having repetitively, a body felt sensation or an emotional pattern or a defense. Most of them are defensive structures. Like when you talked about, I mean, that holding in the body, it's absolutely correlated with what happens to people psychospiritually and socially, is that they get hurt or they've had a trauma and it's a fight, flee, or hide response to try to survive. And so, they shut that part of themselves, the wounded or vulnerable part of themselves, they shut it off. And it's the shutting off mechanism that's the first stage from my perspective. And I think in a lot of ways, the way I work with trauma is that it's a very healthy response because we have to be able to survive in the moment. The problem is we don't reset the breaker switch. We don't know how to do that. And so we run around with the lights off in part of the house. And because there is nature abhors a vacuum, as somebody said that sometime, the part of ourself that has been shut off, like Rapunzel up in the tower, something else comes in to fill that space. And often it's another defensive structure or something that's trying to create safety that's often kind of toxic. It's trying to protect it's based in fear, right? That's basically. And a lot of times that's what inner self-criticism is. That's what fear and anxiety of other people or the future is about. That's what depression is about. Those are actually, from my perspective, like energetic structures. In shamanism, they could be seen as entities in their own right. But there's a lot of different ways you can understand how you understand it doesn't change what's actually happening, is that there's something fills in that space. And it's definitely almost always a lower vibration than the authentic self, which is why we call it darkness, because it usually these defensive structures, because they're rooted in fear and self-protection, which pulls us out of the life flow. So there's kind of an anti-life experience. No, I don't want to have that happen again. And we aren't participating, and we're supposed to participate. So when we participate, we're in the light, we're in the flow. When we're shut off from it, it is more of an experience that keeps us in the dark. Anyway,
and it definitely keeps us separate. It keeps us separate from our true self.
Yes.
It keeps us, because I spent many, many, many years battling severe depression. And what is that? That's putting up the walls of protection. That's creating that separateness. That's that negative self-talk. And I'm going to say it right now. Depression, and this is going to be real hard for people to hear and understand. Depression is a choice.
Once you become conscious of what's actually happening.
Always get help. Don't get me wrong. But
No.
once you start to see through and start seeing the patterns, and you'd said patterns before, beautiful choice. Because it is the patterns. And once we're aware of those patterns,
then we don't have to be a prisoner of those patterns, even though they're physical, even though grandma and great grandpa might have had depression, and that is a behavior pattern. It's an epigenetic system that's part of our body. I'm a recovering alcoholic and drug addict, and that runs back through my family. Not extensively, but there's a line, right? My grandfather was a get drunk in St. Louis and wake up in Chicago with a prostitute, kind of drunk. And grandma stayed with him, right? And grandma stayed with him. And my first husband was like that.
Lord.
Second one was much better. That's, a lot of epigenetics. But we are not prisoners of our reality. And if, I believe solidly that the compass that we get on this plane of duality is pain and joy. And pain shows us that there's a problem. Now, it's complicated what that problem is, and we might need a lot of help to be able to unravel and solve it. But we are not here to live in suffering. We are here to move. We can move toward joy at any time. Yeah.
And we had met at the Fred Dodson workshop, which, if I may share, is reality creation. And I want to dive into that just to touch on it a hair, because yes, we do it. So it's pain avoidance, pleasure seeking. We can say that pretty safely. And as we become more attuned to the subtle, we're able to hear that voice, which, because when we're making the decisions that are authentic and true with our true self, our higher self, we will have the feeling of the wind is at our back. And when we're making decisions that are not aligned with that, this is what karma is for people who like other definitions. This is one I like. Karma is gently pushing us, and then not so gently when we don't listen, onto our true path. We may view it as bad, the events that do it, because it's pain avoidance ultimately. So it's almost like the decisions made from fear, from detachment, from anything opposite of love, will generally be met with a headwind, which will eventually guide us back onto our true path. Now, all of this pertaining to reality creation, my belief system, and it's all about belief systems. Get rid of the bad ones. They do weigh you down like an anchor. As the shadows clear, I was talking to a guy the other day. I do exit interviews for an awakening course sometimes too. And he had experienced something on psychedelics where he was about to go into very high levels of consciousness, and his body stopped him. His consciousness stopped him. And I was like, because you have conflicting beliefs, you have too much noise. If you run, 50,000 watts through that, you'll trip a circuit breaker. They're going in there, they will blow each other up. And so as the noise clears, I find that we move from being blown about by the winds of the world to being able to be in sync, setting clear intention, because that shadow work is so important to clear out the contrary intentions. Oh, I hate myself. Oh, I'm this. That's being sent. And I'm going to tell a very short story that's somewhat amusing. My son wanted to go to a pawn shop because he saw there were swords there a few years back. And I said, if we go into the pawn shop, I'm going to get a big fat hunkin' flamethrower, like a serious flamethrower, a ridiculous flamethrower. So we go to the pawn shop. They didn't have swords, but they did have a ridiculous flamethrower. And we're leaving, and he was somewhat impressed. I'm like, just between you and me, how many times in your life have you seen a flamethrower, much less a ridiculous one? I'm like, yeah, that's my first time too. It's always listening. Our intent is always being put out there, and we are creating it every moment. And it's an
So
important thing for us to know.
it is, but I think the development, and even speaking like to the person who, stopped themselves from going into the higher levels, that I really see people organically. I love the physical world. That's actually, I enter everybody's suffering that they want to heal through the body. Where does it live in your body? The mind has all kinds of lies and stories and stuff. It may or may not be true, right? But the body does tell the truth. And so does physical reality in a lot of ways. Like if it's complicated, but people, there is like an order of operations. And, I'll often say, like, so if I want to plant an apple tree and I want to have apples in my life, I can't expect apples the second year that the tree is only a tiny little stick. Like the tree has to get strong enough, the trunk has to get strong enough, the roots got to go deep enough so that the wind doesn't blow it over and it can hold all those nice, juicy, heavy apples, right? So sometimes people will they'll try to jump, they'll try to spiritual bypass, and they want to jump some of the work and go into the 50,000 volts, and it can actually blow your circuits if you do that. Or you might go there, but it's actually not integrated and sustainable. And so, to be able to hold the self responsibility, the capacity of reality creation that we have is often an incremental process for people, because that level of responsibility can be actually downright terrifying. Never mind if people don't even believe it. To be able to realize we really are co-creators of our reality and ourself, and how to be able to navigate. I mean, this is what Fred Dodson's work is great in he talks about the levels of consciousness very much like my other friend David Hawkins does, that there is kind of a path of development, so that we can hold more light. Because I know for myself, I was shadow identified for the first third of my life. I was a criminal. I was working on becoming a sex worker. I was a drug addict and an alcoholic, and I loved it, right? I loved darkness. I was an anger person. I was full of resentment, and that was my fuel, right? I hated myself. I hated other people. Whether people saw that externally, but that was what was happening internally for me. And that was the fuel. That was the juice that I used to power myself. And it took a long time and a lot of work to be willing to let go of that juice, because that was my source. It's like depression and anxiety and those things, like we get attached to them. That's the hard thing, I think, really to realize. And I'm also a student of the 12 steps. And in the middle of the 12 steps, there's a little one called step 6. And step 6 is where we become willing to have a God, because it tends to talk about God. We become willing to have God remove our character defenses. And it seems like, oh, sure, I want everything removed. But, I'm working with a woman who's a compulsive hoarder who thinks about jumping out of the window of her apartment about once or twice a week in severe depression. And it's like the bottom, you got to get rid of your stuff. But she wants to not have the depression and keep her stuff. I wanted to be happy and still be able to drink vodka. And it doesn't work that there is an exchange that often, like you're talking about, we have to extract something in order for something new to come. That is a pattern of evolution, at least psychospiritually, that I see. And it's the willingness to let go of the thing that no longer serves us. That's often the place where people really get stuck.
Yes. And you made me think of one of the most important things. So I just came back last week from a week-long meditation retreat, and it was some deep patterns got transformed. It's really fantastic. The entire quality of my dreams has been different since. the extraction of, yeah, it was an interesting extraction. I'm not going to go into that, but one of the beautiful
Oh, I
things.
want to make you go into it now because I love extraction.
Okay, I'll go into that in a second.
Okay.
One of the beautiful things, I don't want to forget to say this though, and everyone forgets, we work on love all the time, but the trust is bigger. No one trusts themselves. No one trusts the divine. So in the 12 steps, you're learning to start to trust a little bit. And the more we can trust, because that's also part of the co-creation, that's part of the hoarding. The hoarding is that letting go and trusting that you're still complete. It's all this lack of trust.
Yes.
So anyway,
wait.
Yes.
I love that because
Thank you.
I have always had trouble with the word love. It was abused in my house growing up. It's the single word, the Greeks had like 9 different words for love.
Thank you. I was
all
talking
different
about
kinds
that yesterday. Too many
Right.
yes.
It's ridiculous, right? No, I mean,
Yes.
the Greek, I've actually go through the Greek definitions of it because it's brilliant. They have love of your brother, love of your mother, love of your dog, love of objects, love of
Yes.
self, love of God, love of your friends, like all different. And they are different qualities and different intentions. So the way I love my children is much different than the way that I love my boyfriend or love my best friend or love my house. And so,
And for people that don't really understand the depth of it, that would be like missing the names for so many colors, where it almost creates what you're going to perceive visually as almost just brown without the
beautiful.
descriptor. Yes. So doing that with love, yes, the definition,
No, that's
language.
I
garbage.
love the color piece.
Thank
That's I used to be an art teacher, and when the kids don't get to paint very much, I was an art teacher in a Catholic school because they had a crappy art program actually. So, and the kids never really got to make a mess and paint, and we have to play with these different colors, and they would mix them all together and make what I called Gerpel.
Yes.
It's this yucky brownish purple thing.
Mhm.
And that's actually what we've done, I think, with love in the different levels of consciousness of it. And I myself have really been contemplating this as I'm always working to expand and make more room and continue to clear out. I came here with a lot of bags. I'm still unpacking. To make more room is trust. I've never heard anybody say, I love that. And I'm going to really, that is the place where we need to grow more, I think, than growing in our capacity to love. I think when we trust and open, love flows.
Trust is love. Trust, because trust, if
Oh,
you're living in fear, you don't trust a higher power. Is this higher power and higher self, is the universe, the innate intelligence, whatever you want, God, is it omnipotent? And if so, what are you against it? And so what are you not trusting? So that comes down to, and this was a conversation I was having yesterday, vulnerability. I've been betrayed and I've been burned and I shut down. And that's not okay, because then I just continue to punish myself. Now I know I will not hold my life back because I'm afraid of getting hurt. I will get hurt 1,000 times before I'll hurt myself by not trusting.
well,
So
what
it's
is
like,
hurt? Hurt is basically, I didn't get what I wanted. Sorry.
I'm going to open myself up to
Basically,
be
hurt is,
vulnerable.
there's different levels. We could talk about
But
that.
it was protecting from vulnerability is a
Yeah.
huge part of the depression. So that's also the trust. I will be vulnerable. Whatever happens, I trust I can handle it. So it's this trust in myself too, the ability to open.
You know what I love is I'm going to go global for a minute. And
Yes, please.
what's been very disappointing for me, actually, in many teachers that I follow, is the level of catastrophization and hopelessness and doom and gloom that I hear about what's happening globally and environmentally and politically in the world. And again, if you believe in an innate intelligence way beyond our capacity to understand, and there's a co-creative experience happening here, again, way beyond our individual capacity, able to make mitochondria and cause whole and universes, right?
Yes.
How can we mess that up so bad that it can't be fixed, that just makes no sense to me at all. And the distrust that we have, the over reliance that we have on humans needing to figure everything out, that we think we run the world, and we really don't. I think and when we can really come into trust. Now, I don't know how it's all going to work out, and no one gets out of here alive. We have to know that everything's impermanent, right? So it's very, I think I'm very excited about this clarity about the word trust, because I think that individually, I think familially and socially, I think intercontinentally and in the world, like, we need to grow in trust.
Well, this is what's beautiful right now. Alan Watts has a book entitled The Wisdom of Insecurity. See, that's what this trust is. It's like, okay, the realization, the only thing I can fix is myself. Any teacher who's saying something otherwise, I turn them off, because they're thinking small. That, yes, on the 3D plane, it's kind of a mess, apparently, but it's not.
Apparently, but it's not.
But it's not. And
It's not. No.
And the biggest, it's never the crime, it's the cover-up. It's not the injury, it's the resistance to it that causes all the pain. So the more we're trying to control and not trusting, the more we're hurting ourselves. And most importantly, and you have to see this because I see it in my patient population, I talk to other professionals, I just look at the world. In order to, and we're going to go on the story base right now, it's all different levels of consciousness to look at this. So at the lower level of the story, collectively, everyone's getting pushed. It's like in a video game. We are actually at a level up right now. And in a level up, you fight a boss. And the boss is constructed based upon our own projection. And our projections are our shadow work, our fears, so everyone projects their own boss, and everyone right now is in a boss fight. So it looks ugly. But it's actually, this is the process of growth, to push out of complacency, to prove to ourselves, to pull deep, to find that trust, to find that faith, to find that metal. This is a beautiful evolving. A caterpillar, I decided this the other day, a caterpillar does not go into a chrysalis because he's happy. He's a sad little caterpillar, and he goes in and comes out as a butterfly.
Right.
He's probably a sad little guy. He's like, this whole leaf eating thing isn't working out so well. And he has no idea what's in store for him. And that goes back to my the shadow work I did at my freaking at my retreat. But I realized I was a sad caterpillar.
Oh, you gotta tell the story now.
So I'm at this retreat over at the Monroe Institute, and it's funny because I've done a bunch there, and I can tell anyone I love that place. I'm terrible at doing it. Everyone else can do the remote viewing. I never get it.
I did some work with Tom Campbell. Remote viewing is not that. I don't actually find it that interesting.
So I do not do well with almost. And this is my 7th retreat there. I don't do well with what I'm supposed to do. Instead, I get these insanely powerful downloads. Like, so I'm there hitting super crazy cool levels of consciousness, like not just cool, but like really, really powerful. And I decided at this point, I'm writing down my intention before I meditate. First time I did that. And it really increased the power of it. And I'd written down, I would like to clear my deep patterns, even if it has to be painful. I prefer it not be. So I do this meditation, and in one of them, I'm on a table and there's chains on me, and then the chains are being let go. And these are chains my father had put there. That's what they told me. And they were false beliefs and doubt and all that other stuff. And they were being let go. I was also told that I have been protecting from my heart's vulnerability with violence, and that's no longer necessary. And I have great capacity, basically. So that's cool. I go on. I'm having a great time.
Does that mean you need to return the flamethrower? No. Go ahead.
I did not buy the flamethrower.
Okay. Anyway.
So I go and do another meditation, go very deep. We're doing earth level meditation. We're going in. So it's a very, very, very powerful energy. And the only way I can describe grounding to people is very different from everyone else. I consider grounding as we have the capacity of a drop of water. Grounding is becoming the ocean, because that's what we're plugging into with the earth. So this is deep earth level, and I come out and I am just in pain. My entire chest area feels like it's on a deep internal fire. There's like a very deep ache. it hurts. I did focusing after a little while, and oddly enough, I did the opposite of what's done in focusing, which is don't label it. I ended up finding it was sort of a deep existential pain of loneliness,
Mhm.
very similar to that. And then through a series of events, and I can only say they were perfect because they were horrible. But it like on a retreat, I managed to experience betrayal and deeper loneliness, but it was all in my head, just
Mhm.
misperceiving events. But I needed it to construct the pattern. And the pattern was, if I think someone does something, I'm going to do petty slights and other nonsense like that. And I could see how those behaviors, like anything just passive aggressive, just stupid little things, those little tiny digs, I could see how each of them is a strike against me at that time. And each of them is causing me further damage.
Mm.
And it's just these little, because it's an attempt to have that control. It's an attempt to still maintain control and to not trust and to not be present. And yeah, that took about probably 16 hours to fully burn through and extricate. When I went into my meditation in the morning, I was miserable still. But in the meditation, they have something that's called clicking out. And when you click out, it's like you flip a switch and it turns back on like 20 minutes later. All of a sudden, you're fully conscious again. Like it's not sleep. And they say that's from when you get really powerful downloads that consciousness can't process. I could tell you this. I was in a very unhappy place going in, and I came out, and it was like all of that pain and everything that I'd held in my body had to be seen and realized to be let go. And when I came back, it was just filled with joy, love, and peace. I was bursting. I went out and I climbed a tree, and I just had one of the best experiences. It was a beautiful, beautiful experience. And ever since then, I'm not kidding, the quality of my dreams before that was like an action movie. There was always that thrill seeking, that chase, and all that other stuff. Ever since then, the quality of dreams is different. And the way I see dreams is not that I have a dream. I see dreams, and I've actually had shadow work. I had shadow work done in the dream the other night, and I only say shadow work can be done here, but that's a lie. I see dreams as my vibration, which exists on all the planes, projects into this realm. It also projects into the dream realm.
Mhm.
So those are connected differently than this realm projecting into the dream realm. So it's a difference in my core vibration that was let go if my dreams shifted.
Right. Another window got opened to add to the prism.
Yes. And
Yeah.
so I've had shadow work in the dream realm, which has been a gift, and I'm very grateful when it happens because I'm able to confront an issue the way I would here. But it's issues that are so like I forget what one of them was. It was not quite death of a child level, but it was horrible. And I
Mhm.
was so grateful to have it in the dream realm because I was able to face that issue vibrationally without having the stickiness and permanence of it that I would experience here.
Mhm.
So it let go of it. So anyway, that's a little bit of my weird shadow work.
Well, it's not weird. And I think it's really, really important, and I really value your willingness to share, because one of the ways that a lot of Western therapists, and I am a therapist of many therapists, are trained is that I'm supposed to pretend like I'm all better and like you're the projected patient. And I got to say, I've very rarely in my life worked with anybody who was as dysfunctional as me. I'm not dysfunctional anymore, but I continue to do my own work and be very, I'm not elevated. I'm still in process. We all are here. If you got a body, you're in process.
But that's what makes you so good because you've been there, done that. Because you've had the experiences that gives you an ability to connect and to see in ways that people that haven't been in the trenches, like my ability to relate is very good because I've suffered a lot.
You've done your own work, right? Well,
Yes.
I think my teacher said to me, one of my teachers said to me, and I think it's true. We don't have to have been the places that people have been to be able to bring them there, but we need to be willing to go there with them or within ourselves. And it's again, this willingness to be vulnerable, to be an adventurer in your own self, in your own psyche, to be willing to be open to something different than what's familiar and patterned and repeated.
And to
And so,
trust yourself and trust the process. Because
yes,
as
and
you let go, you get that beautiful flow going on.
right. And it's awesome. But there is, I think, that piece, and you just described it in real time of what happened for you, is that we have to get conscious. Most people, you have to get conscious about our attachment to the suffering. That is the piece. Whether we like it or not, we are attached to our suffering. That's our responsibility. Am I willing? I don't even need to necessarily intention what's next. I don't have to do that. I need to know that I'm willing, I'm done with this, whatever it is. And when we're willing to let it go, now we can intention, and that may be filled with our own reality creation, or, for myself, again, as a 12-step person, I like the idea of leaving it up to a better mind or the higher powers than me that have better. I would always sell myself short with my own intentions. They're always very low. So when I'm like, show me your will for me and grant me the power to carry it out, and I'm willing to let go of this other stuff comes in I couldn't imagine. Yeah, that's like excellent. But that's the risk. Like it's the risk of being willing to let go of the suffering that we know. And it's always refundable, folks. I'll just tell you, your suffering is always refundable. You can always go back to what you've always done. If you're willing to take a risk and try something new, that's where things can really open up and we can get into the flow.
Yeah. And that's another thing that is going to make this one real short. Shadow work becomes fun. I had a patient come in. This is just for acupuncture, easy, straight acupuncture. She comes in, she's kind of all sick and sniffly and gross and whatever. And I'm like, and I've known her pretty well, right? So I'm like, what's going on? She's like, well, it's the weather. I'm like, everyone else here is in this weather and only you're coming in like this. What's going on? So she's a teacher. They keep giving her more work. She's swamped. I said, your body, and this is a super important point. That's why I wanted to tell this. Your body is telling you can't keep doing this. And you're either going to listen to your body now, or you're going to have to listen later, and it's going to be a lot louder.
Right.
So we had a quick talk, and I was like, do you have to do this work as a part of your contract? No. Okay, well then, next time they ask you, do some horse trading. Be like, okay, I can't do this as well as all my other work. What could you take off my plate so I can do this work to help you out? And this is going to sound a little bit crass, but I also, at a certain point, I'm like, you don't want to be a bitch, pardon my words.
Mm-hmm.
But I had to have her confront that before she dealt with them, because there's so much conditioning about standing up for yourself and it not being okay. So I gave her permission. We discussed it and opened up and gave her permission to know she wasn't being anything. She was just being present. Right. I saw her the next week. She was a new person. So many great things happened. She took her power. She took her space. This is the most powerful shadow work in the world. Everyone thinks it has to be done on a mountain in Tibet. This is the real work.
Oh yeah. No, right here, right now, your boss, your husband, your kid, the neighbor next door, whatever your own relationship with yourself and your distractions and addictions. Like, oh no, it's in real time. That's why I don't actually do a lot of past life work. Sometimes it will come up. And it's fine and it can be helpful, but generally we don't have to do past life work, because anything you need to work on, it's going to be right in your face in real time right now in your life. Yeah.
It's a gift. We keep presenting us the opportunity to grow.
Yes.
Right here, right now.
Yes. Yes. So awesome. So awesome. Absolutely. So any takeaways for people at home that they can do with themselves? Is there any clearing work that people can do on their own bodies? What do you suggest for people in this consciousness, or even just clearing shadow and reintegration in themselves?
Really, one of the biggest things is bringing your awareness into what you're feeling. The more you're able to feel, you could think about it like a finite resource of processing that we have in this body. The more you're feeling, the less you're in your head. The more you're present, the more you're in this moment, and your body will tell you, here's what you do. Start moving your body. Everything in the spiritual world is like, oh, the body's not real, this and that, and dismissing it. And I'm working with a friend of mine, and anxiety, all this other stuff. She started doing yoga and integrating that with mindfulness at the same time. And she finds that it is just all of it's feeding on each other and building, and she's just releasing in giant blocks. So move a little bit, feel that resistance and be present in yourself. It's a beautiful thing. It is your temple. This world is a temple.
It is. And lean into the resistance. I think that's
Yes.
that's the hard thing. You know what it's like? I just had this image of, like, you know, those old movies where they'd be in a pyramid and one of them, it's like a comedy, and he'd lean against the wall and then it would like open up into a trap door. So that's like, we got to lean into those blocks of cement within ourselves, and there's trap doors under them that lead to the treasure in the temple. Right?
Yeah, be vulnerable, be engaged in life. Don't shut yourself off from life, and do not ever, as you catch yourself doing it, please stop the negative self-talk. Get to the point where you are glad that you're you, where you wouldn't want to be anyone else, because that's the only place you can be.
So I actually want to speak to that because that's hard for a lot of people. Like, it's kind of like pulling yourself up by your own bootstraps. So in my book, Allies and Demons, Working with Spirit for Power and Healing. And you can find this on my website as a free download. So each chapter has a free guided meditation that goes with it. That's actually the work. And chapter 5 is dissolving the inner critic. And so you can go to my website, reneemckenna.com, and you can click on Inner Journeys and go to number 5. And it's actually an ancient Tibetan Buddhist meditation practice of extracting the shadow and reintegrating something that's more appropriate. I call it an inner IOS, an internal operating system update. And so, so if people want help with that, I think that's the first block for most people, is the fear and the self-protection that's actually underlying the inner critic that tells us to be small. It tells us not to take risks. It tells us to protect. You're not good enough. Whatever the lies it tells us, it's become a toxic way to protect ourselves that we need to let go of and be able to step into that self-love and the trust of ourself and the universe and the unfolding.
I love that. I love that you said inner iOS, because like we had been the darkness discussion and all that, those parasites are like a computer virus where they just start eating all the resources and slowing everything down. And so you're cleaning up, you're running that antivirus, you're getting that junk out of there.
Yeah, it is. You know, there's a Stephen Covey in his book, The 7 Habits of Highly Successful People, talks about inner mapping and how, and I just love it because it makes so much sense. It's so we grow up, you know, I grew up in Boston, right? So and I know Boston pretty well. And so, you know, I have an inner map of Boston. And for a lot of us, our inner psychic space is developed under the age of 15. And a lot of times it developed too much after that in certain areas, particularly like socially and relationally. And so, you know, if I'm walking around the world trying to just use a map of Boston in New York, here where I am, or San Francisco, or I was just down in Tyler, Texas, like, I'm going to be crashing into stuff all the time. Like, I need to have updated maps and get a GPS that's flexible enough that it can actually adapt to wherever I am. And that's what presence is about, is to be here now and receiving the downloads of the maps into my inner GPS that we get. And it's awesome. And I know that you know this, the things that are happening technologically are absolutely metaphors for what's happening on the metaphysical or the transpersonal or the spiritual planes. And we are manifesting them in ordinary reality with the things that we're creating, like AI and GPSs and computers. And it's not a coincidence. They really are. I mean, we're playing in the sandbox over here, but they're models for the larger system.
Well, it can't hide from itself.
No. Nor does it want to. Well, it kind of does, but
I think that's the game. Yeah,
it is the game. Right.
And that's what it is. It is a game. If you're not having fun, it is a game.
Well, Chris, this was super fun. And, you know, I think we're going to do it again, because there's some other stuff you had talked about, migraines and some other stuff. And let's set up another time for another awesome discussion. I think that would be
absolutely great. This has been a blast. I knew it would be.
Awesome. Chris,
Thank you.
thank you so much. Links to Chris's contact information is in the show notes. If you enjoyed this video, please subscribe and give me a like so more people can see it. And Chris, we will talk again soon.
All right. Thank you, Renee. This has been awesome.
Have a great day.